the purpose or the mission that you're called to fulfill from the embodiment of your soul creates a ripple effect outward. And every single life that you touch and every single engagement and interaction that you have, whatever your world looks like, I don't care how big or small it is, you make a huge impact with the presence of your God presence of your. Hi guys, welcome back. Today I've been guided to talk about the difference between knowing who you really are versus embodying who you really are. And this message is for those of you who are already on a spiritual path of unity consciousness. You understand the concept of oneness. You are well read. You follow all the teachings. You're accustomed to doing the work to heal. But there's something within you that feels like you're not quite tuned in or feeling truly connected, even though you resonate with being on a spiritual path. Maybe there's some perpetual cycle of self-doubt or anxiety going on, and that even though you may know intellectually that you are source energy, there's a hard time truly, viscerally embodying and believing fully in that knowing so that it shows up as the integration of your physical life experience. So I have this table set up because I'm going to actually share with you a little fun visual demonstration that can really help give you a bird's eye view of the journey of awakening, the journey of coming into more embodiment of the source energy that you already are, that we all are. And this will help to, my hope is that this will help you make that instant shift, even just by being a part, witnessing what I'm going to share with you, and to be in that active vibration so that you can shift into the awareness of viscerally knowing and embodying more of who you really are. So let me get a few things set up here and we'll get started. All right, there's no better place to start than from the beginning of your manifestation here in this lifetime. So this cup here will represent your physical vessel, the physical body that you chose to incarnate on this earth. And I've got some Sprite here. This Sprite is going to represent our spirit, the spirit of who you really are, or our source energy. So when we are born as source energy in a human body, in a physical body. So as you may know on the journey, the cliche is we are spirit beings having a human experience. Yes, we are human beings, but the core of who we really are is the true divine nature of our spirit. Okay, that's going to be represented by this right here. So now, here is where the illusion takes place. The moment we are born, because of the human condition, in order to survive in this physical body, you must take on the condition of the human ego. Okay? That's going to be represented by this oil here. So, at the moment of birth, this is why there's a part of us that suddenly forgets who we really are. We forget that we are source energy. We forget that we came from source energy. And in order to survive, we attach our identity to the ego. So if we take a look at the liquids now as a metaphor, we can see that the Sprite and the oil do not mix together. They are of different vibrations. Same with the spirit and the ego. Or you can also look at this as love and fear, or the light and the dark within us. Okay, they're both needed in order for us to embrace the wholeness of who we really are. So I'm going to actually add a little bit more Sprite here. And this is why. Take a look now. I was hoping to create some carbonation. Okay, so if you see the bubbles rising up to the surface, you can see that the Sprite bubbles, or I want to call them our spirit bubbles, are able to rise and cut through the oil and up to the surface, up to the top. And I like to call this our spirit bubbles because this is how Source is constantly speaking to us, constantly calling us to rise and to remember who we really are. So for those of you that get those intuitive hits, those intuitive whispers, where are they coming from? They are coming from your source energy, rising within you, calling you to listen, calling you to inspiration, calling you to follow through, and or maybe not to follow through on something, whatever way you are being guided. Okay. We all have those spirit bubbles constantly calling us to rise and remember who we really are. Now, as we go through our life experience, because before we came on earth, we chose certain life experiences to expand our soul, to evolve our soul. What ends up happening is over time, whatever drama and trauma we experience, whatever stories we tell, whatever meaning we attach to the events that we experience, whatever belief systems that we take on from other people, we then reinforce that belief system, remaining attached to the identity of our ego. Okay, so if you take a look now, you can still see that the spirit bubbles are still able to rise through to the top, but the density of our ego or our fear or our darkness is now more embodied within us, meaning we have attached our identity more to the presence of our ego, our fear, our dark, than to the source of our light, our loving awareness. So what this means is that over time, if we keep perpetuating the identity as the ego, it becomes harder for us to receive those messages from spirit, to be able to listen and hear what spirit is calling us toward. Okay. So this is usually when we end up in states of turmoil and chronic anxiety, chronic depression. Maybe we even develop ailments, disease, diabetes, chronic conditions, autoimmune diseases, however it shows up. But it doesn't have to be that way. If we choose to remain attached tightly to the identity of the ego, meaning that we think we are just human, we are just this physical body, forgetting that we are so much more beyond the physical body, this is what ends up happening as our life experience. We perpetuate a life experience of struggle, sacrifice, and unnecessary suffering. We don't realize that we unconsciously choose it. So it's usually by this point in our life experience that we eventually get sick and tired of being sick and tired. We realize, hey, I don't want to suffer anymore. There's got to be more to life than this. And this is usually when that breakdown to breakthrough period happens or our awakening begins to happen. And in that moment, many of you have already initiated that, otherwise you wouldn't be drawn to this video. But in that moment, then we begin to ask ourselves questions like, who am I? Why am I here? What is my purpose on earth? Okay, we question the existence of life, the meaning of life, and our role in it. And what ends up happening when we begin asking those questions is we begin to now, instead of being so attached to the ego, looking for answers outward, we begin to look within for the answers inside of us. And as you know, that's where all of the answers are. It's not a cliche thing. It is the truth of who we are. Source energy. So as you begin looking in and begin to realize there's something within me that is calling me to rise. I don't quite know what that is, but I'm willing to take a look within and explore that and get to know myself more. Once you begin that pivot, which is now entering a new vibration, this is what begins to happen. You begin to embody a little more of who you really are and release a little more of that grip, that attachment to the ego's need to survive. Okay? So from this awareness, and you realize, okay, there's a new way. Whatever path you are guided to on your spiritual path, you would be guided to a teacher or a healer or a friend that introduces you to an event that brings you into this new awareness of yourself. Whatever you're guided to on your journey, the more that you give yourself permission to follow it, to follow those spirit bubbles that are speaking to your intuitive hits, whatever that is, the more and more you begin to embody who you really are. So it may look like, okay, I'm being called to heal my relationship with my mother or my father or my partner or my children, whatever that is. So then as you feel that inspiration come to you, you do the work to heal, you make peace with it, you're beginning to embody more of who you really are. Another thing that happens on the journey of healing and transformation is that you realize that you have had so many repressed emotions or energy blockages around different events in your life that you finally give yourself permission to create sacred space for, so that you can fully embrace them and face them and heal them, instead of continue to oppress them with the identity of the ego. And as you give yourself permission to feel what's been repressed, feel what's been holding you back, express your truth, whatever that looks like for you, again, the more you embody the nature of who you really are. Now, at some point along the spiritual journey, we reach a phase where we feel stuck, where we followed all the teachers, we read all the books, we are aware of who we really are, but we're also still fully aware of the presence of our ego. And then we stay stuck in this cycle of what I call split energy. Split energy in two senses. In the sense that, oh my gosh, I'm overwhelmed, I'm all over the place, I got all of this information, all this knowledge, what do I do with it? Giving, possibly creating a difficulty on focusing. And then there's another type of split energy that I call still identifying with both, meaning that we're attached to the identity of the ego still, and we are now embracing the identity of our source energy. So when we identify as both, I am the human body and I am source energy. Well, that may be true on one level. That creates a perpetual cycle of confusion and anxiety, because we are still confused between, wait, who am I really? Okay. And this is probably the area that I see a lot of people on the spiritual journey remain stuck in, because there's a part of them that maybe in their meditation practices, or when they go to their yoga or their spiritual community, or when all the conditions are well, right? Okay, I feel at one with source. But then there's another part of them that when they look at certain conditions of their life that they do not like, or certain conditions in other people, they're still judging and condemning other people and other people's behavior, still attaching to the ego's need to control other people or seek approval from other people, and causing this split. Okay. So this actually still creates even more suffering. But I like to call this that sweet spot where the next level of expansion is about to occur. Because to be truly spiritual means, to me, means to be more embodied in the presence of love than you are in the presence of fear. Why? Because your embodiment of your presence of love, more than anything else, the presence of your God source energy, allows you then to create a life where you lead from the spirit, you lead from your source energy, rather than allowing the ego to think that it must lead or be in charge. So how do we get past this block if you feel like you're stuck here, split between two identities? Okay, this is what I call coming into your oneness or unity consciousness. And as you know, on your spiritual journey, it starts with the breath. So along the journey, you may have already been doing this, breathing your way back to connection with your source energy. And this is often done with a devotion to your spiritual practice, whether it is literally breath work or any form of meditation or any form of a meditative experience where you can really focus on deep, slow breathing, breathing deep into your body, anchoring your source energy into your body. And that could be something as simple as dancing or going for a walk in nature, or maybe even just sitting to journal and write and allow source to channel through you. Anything that allows you to get out of that monkey brain mind that's in fear-based anxiety, and just to the breath, which is the source energy of who you really are. Remembering that as you breathe, breathing into your body, exhaling and inhaling deeply, that you are being your life force energy, that you are radiating your life force energy, that you are present and integrating deep into your cells the presence of your life force energy through the conscious slowing down of your breath. And one thing that I like to practice in order to remember and remain connected or return to the presence of source energy within me whenever I forget is to practice what I call a moment by moment consciousness. What does that mean? Literally, moment by moment, you're practicing self-awareness of looking at, who am I identifying as? Am I identifying as source energy? Or am I identifying as the ego or the limitations, the perceived limitations of my human experience? And when you take a breath, in this moment now, give yourself a chance to pause and tune in. This doesn't just have to be during your morning meditation or your evening yoga. This could be literally moment by moment throughout your day-to-day experience as you allow your breath, just pausing to anchor in to your source energy deep within your body, to remember, I feel my spirit there. I feel the nature of who I am. What will that feel like? It will feel like relief. It will feel like peace. It will feel like the knowing and trusting that all is well. It will feel like surrender to the nature of who you really are. And from that moment of just pausing to connect with your consciousness, then allowing whatever thought comes next, rises from that being, from that loving energy, whatever action you're inspired to from that loving energy, and live your life that way. Meaning that, hey, there's going to be days where you attach to your ego and it's okay. But let that contrast allow you to pause and breathe and to practice this moment by moment consciousness, or moment by moment choice of choosing to identify with who you really are, to remember who you really are. And what ends up happening when you devote to breathing through your life that way, this is what ends up happening. As you begin to embody this practice as your new way of being, moment by moment on a day-to-day basis, tuning in to connect with the nature of who you really are allows you then to embody more dominantly the presence of your source energy, the presence of your light, the presence of your love. How can you tell? This can be felt, not just by you, because from this state of embodiment, you will be more of an unconditional loving, unconditional accepting, unconditional peace. Or even when you get agitated or fall into a depression, it becomes easier for you to return to this knowing of who you are, because you have practiced moment by moment the breath that allows you to embody your source energy, your God source presence. Now, if you take a look here, there's still going to be, even if I pour the rest of this can of Sprite here, okay, I'm going to let the bubble settle. There's still on the surface going to be that film or that veil of oil of the ego that is there. Why? Because we need it. The ego was meant not to lead, but to serve the nature of who we really are. That veil, the veil between our physical experience and our non-physical reality of who we really are, is what is needed to anchor us into this physical body so that we can express our source energy through the veil of the ego. And this is how we allow the ego to become the authentic expression, the physical expression of our human body, of our intellectual mindset, of who we really are. So at this level of truly knowing, or what I'm going to call embodying who you really are, this I would call the point of no return, meaning that you have created a moment by moment consciousness, a new way of being. And let me insert a very important word. You have chosen to live in a moment by moment consciousness. You have chosen your embodiment and devotion of the breath of your spiritual practice, of feeling, not just knowing, but feeling tuned in and connected, by choosing that as your new way of being, as your everyday lifestyle. That the point of no return is that once you fully know who you really are, you cannot unknow, because it's already become an integrated part of your embodiment so much that you will begin to feel that it is uncomfortable to attach to your ego identity. Not that you're trying to kill the ego. We need the ego. We can embrace our ego with love, but give it a new role that, hey, you can take a rest. You don't have to lead, because all of who I am is here and ready to show up. And here is how you can express the nature of who I really am. When you allow your spirit, your source energy to take the lead, wow, how magnificent of a life experience you create and co-create with others moving forward. And not necessarily because the physical conditions must change. Now, it's inevitable that they will, but it's because now you're at a place where you can unconditionally accept and have unconditional presence of whatever goes on within you and around you, both light and dark, both fear and love, both spirit and ego. That because you are embodied in that nature, your energy of love will radiate and transmute the fear that comes up within you or around you. That you will have a beautiful impact, that you become a vibrational match to the solutions that we are seeking in this world because of who you are being. And from this energy of being, whatever thoughts come from you from that state of being, whatever words, whatever ways you communicate from the state of being, the actions that you choose to take, the purpose or the mission that you're called to fulfill from the embodiment of your soul creates a ripple effect outward. And every single life that you touch and every single engagement and interaction that you have, whatever your world looks like, I don't care how big or small it is, you make a huge impact with the presence of your God presence, of your source energy presence. Whether you are called to be on a video like this, for example, or the way that you treat the clerk at the grocery store or the barista making your coffee, every single thing radiates outward and makes an impact on what we create as our reality, as the world that each of us experience. And every single one of us is going to experience a different world because of what we choose to embody, because of who we choose to identify as. And from this embodied state of being, this is when we also begin to see the world through the eyes of Source. What does that mean? I've got another glass prepared here. It means that when we are embodied in the nature of who we really are, we can be looking at someone else who is possibly more dominantly showing us, projecting to us, the embodiment of their fear or the attachment to their ego, probably trying to argue for their limitations or play the victim card or say all the reasons why they can't or they're not enough, or perhaps trying to prove evidence and make somebody wrong or prove who's right and compare themselves to others. We could be seeing that going on. But if we are now embodied in our source energy, this energy will not affect us because we will see them through the eyes of Source and realize that they are also the same source energy that we are. And we can now come to a place of compassion because even though they're showing us this, we can see this. And this is the part, if we choose it, we can connect with in them because we're connected with the source energy in us. And this allows us to have a state of compassion, or speaking from an authentic place of truth that is based in love, whether we just hold them in a space of compassion and releasing the need to judge them or make them, become more enlightened or embodied. There, you can accept them just as they are, liberating them to freely express and freely choose whether they can choose to be attached to the ego if they want. That's how much freedom that we have. We can choose to suffer unknowingly. It's often an unconscious choice, but we can choose it if we really want. It's not our business to choose for other people. It's our responsibility to look at what we are choosing for ourselves. And as we make this conscious choice, we can have compassion for people that may not yet feel connected to who they really are. On the flip side, this can also give us clarity of healthy boundaries that may need to be communicated or set in place. So perhaps if this is the energy that you are embodied and radiating, somebody like this might be repelled from you. Or maybe this might be someone in your social circle that you're realizing maybe we no longer have compatibility, and this is perhaps a relationship that I must be willing to let go. Or maybe just the way you choose to engage with this person will change, meaning you're no longer maybe willing to hold space for the drama and trauma going on. Maybe there will be somebody else better to serve them that is of closer vibrational proximity to be the validator for them, for example. And again, this is your free will choice in whatever way that you are divinely guided. This could also represent maybe a toxic relationship that you might be in where you are called to, okay, I need to walk away from this, right? This no longer serves me. But it doesn't mean that you attack them in judgment. You can let them go with love. And as you stay in your embodiment, no matter where other people are around you, one of two things will happen. Either they will be repelled by you, may push your light away and say, who do you think you are, right? And go on their merry way and continue the perpetuation of their fear, the doubt, the oil, the ego. Or they may rise to meet you, not because you're trying to influence them to, but because you're owning your own energy, that they will be able to feel it. And if they choose to receive it at their free will, they may be inspired to do the work to heal, to remember who they really are as well, and perhaps rise to meet you in a new way of being in this conscious evolution from the embodied nature of who we really are. But again, this is something that everyone has free will to choose or not. So there's one last thing I want to end on here with the awakening journey and the journey of embodying source energy. And I made a mess here. Let me clean it up. Put some things off to the side here. So for those of us who have been on this journey a very long time, we may experience, it's inevitable, I should say, that we will experience bouts of breakdown and breakthrough, of new contrast and new expansion, because by nature, we are constantly evolving. We are constantly expanding. Source energy was not meant to remain stagnant in this physical vessel just to this capacity only. You're going to notice there are phases along your journey where you're like, oh my God, why did this horrible thing happen to me? Why did I get stuck into this fear? What is going on? I thought I healed that already. That comes up a lot. Okay? Because our journey of embodiment is an eternal one. I should say embodying, meaning that it is a continual practice. We must continue to choose moment by moment to remember who we really are. It is never a one and done process, even when you get to this state, this feeling state on your journey. Why? Because we are always going to be called into more. We are always going to be called into a new, greater capacity to be the love that we are. So I don't want to do this now because of the mess it will take, but if I were to pour this Sprite into this bigger jar, this bigger capacity, it wouldn't fill the top, which means that there would still be a capacity for the ego to enter, to reattach to the suffering to happen again, because we are being called to stretch out of our comfort zone, to possibly release an old identity, going through that death and rebirth cycle where we are called to take a leap of faith and enter a new, greater capacity, a new expansion of our capacity to love and be loved, a new expansion of our capacity to radiate our presence in the world or to hold space for other people's at perhaps a new level of responsibility, for example. Okay? And then the journey continues. Then we're going to have the death of that one and be called even into a greater capacity. So the practice of this moment by moment consciousness must continue to be our devotion and our choice. Otherwise we are called into this new role, forgetting, then suddenly allowing us to embody the oil attached to the ego again out of fear of, I don't know what I'm doing. I've never done this before, forgetting who we really are. We can still have that level of embodiment there, but that also gives us a greater capacity for the level of the ego to get in the way if we allow it to. And then, I don't have another bigger jar, but there comes a time where our time in this physical vessel, in the different versions of our physical vessel, are called to completion. And then we enter or we return to the transcendence of our non-physical energy, our pure source energy, our pure love and light, whenever that may be. And then we come back into the cycle again, or wherever we are called to on our journey. We are eternal beings. So when you realize that and allow yourself to embrace that core identity of who you really are, then we no longer need to attach to these physical identities, these roles of the ego expression that will continue to evolve over time. But the constant is the life force energy that we are. That will always, eternally, forever remain the same, except more evolved in new expanded states of consciousness. I hope this served you in some way, and I invite you to take a breath and practice that moment by moment consciousness today to anchor your source energy into your body here and now. Thank you so much for joining me, and I'll see you in the next video.